What is it?
The main thing I got from it was like this sense of feeling seen and validated.
Well, why does it have to be this way?
This book was placed in my hand for this moment.
Insightful, learned a lot, wrote some quotes that I'm ready to like paint on my wall.
I love this book!
That we just kind of pull out some of the big themes that we see and talk about a few different ones.
I apologize if most of my contribution has K-pop references.
Alternative book title, The Feminine Mystique Part 2. You were really just gay all along. Welcome to Book Club.
With Julia.
And Victoria.
Two readers with more bookstore tote bags than they could possibly use in a lifetime. Please tell us what to do with them. And we would love to be your book friends.
This is a podcast for the books we just can't shut up about.
And this week, we're talking about another one of Victoria's picks.
2 for 2!
2 for 2! Look at us go. 8 Billion Genies by Charles Soule and Ryan Browne. An 8-issue comic book series that imagines what would happen if each person in the world, all at once, received a genie that would grant them one wish. We then follow the consequences of this event after 8 seconds, 8 minutes, 8 hours, 8 days, 8 weeks, 8 months, 8 years, 8 decades, and 8 centuries, which is kind of crazy.
There's a lot of 8s.
There's a lot of 8s.
This book is full of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just a heads up, there will be spoilers throughout this entire episode. We will talk about the entirety of the comic book series, so if you want to go read it first, this is your official warning, but whether or not you have read it, you are welcome here.
Yeah, welcome. If you want to support the show, you can rate, review, and subscribe on any and all podcast platforms. If you go down to any book links in the show notes, they will take you to our affiliate page on bookshop.org, where you can purchase books and support local bookstores, and we get a very small kickback. And if you'd like to join the club, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjv for archived episodes, newsletters, giveaways, our film club series, where we review book to TV or book to film adaptations, all kinds of good stuff.
Julia, I'm like, oh, you've got your like evening voice on because we're recording later,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not. It's later for me. You're just in a different time zone, but it's like exactly the time you always record.
Yep. Yeah, this is actually quite normal for me now.
I will be slowly going crazy through the course of this episode as I get a wee bit tireder every moment. But I'm here. I'm excited. It's also my pick, so I feel like I just have some natural enthusiasm that's coming through.
Yeah.
I picked up 8 Billion Genies. There was a spell in 2022 that I was haunting the local comic book store with my partner. We would just be bored and be like, we should go to the comic book store. And I've never felt so cliche as a nerd. And it was delightful. I haven't been in a while, but honestly, it's no shade to comic books. I still love them. I just have had other things to read lately. But anyways, on recommendation from a lovely comic book seller, I picked up the first issue of 8 Billion Genies, like the month it was released. And so I instantly fell in love with the colorful, goofy style of the artwork, and I was very intrigued by the premise. And so yeah, it was like the first time I got to follow a series from issue 1.
We've never been so on time for anything in our lives.
I know. I'm like, I'm up with the coolest things. Have you heard of the latest new comic book series from Charles Soule? Anyway, so I had the joy of getting to like savor every panel and like reread the issues because I had a whole month in between issues, sometimes more than that. And so yeah, it helped me very much like slow down and like savor this comic book series. And I think that's why it stuck with me more, because earlier in 2022, I had read through all of Saga and all of Paper Girls. Both are brilliant Brian K. Vaughan comics. And I read those in like a matter of weeks. Paper Girls, I think in a matter of days.
Wow.
So 8 Billion Genies was a chance to like slow down. And then now revisiting this for this episode, rereading, it was really fun to catch some of the little fun details that I missed, as well as see how they set up the final concluding issue all the way from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Which, reading it for the first time, you don't always catch all those little hints at what the conclusion will be.
Yeah, so we had really drastically different reading experiences then.
Very different, yeah.
That's really, yeah. I was very excited because now that I'm in the US, I can have a library card again.
Oh, we love the library. Oh, that's so exciting. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
I love your little Arthur dance. She was doing the dance like
Having
from
fun
Arthur the TV show.
Isn't hard when you've got a library card.
Just move your arms back and forth.
Yeah. So I was very excited to use my new, like, digital library checkout powers to access this one. And so I read it in like 2 sittings on my phone.
Nice.
So I could like zoom in on it and stuff. Yeah, so I really like inhaled it all at once, and I didn't really have a chance to like savor the art and think about what the story might be ahead of time. You know what I mean? There was no like external thought about it. It was just like taking it all at once. I really love the art style, especially for the genies. It's a fun hypothetical for sure. I think the structure is clever with sort of the 8 theme and the exponential growth of time, you know? But by the end, particularly the last issue, it really feels like, I mean, I felt this all the way through, but particularly the last issue, it felt like I was reading some kind of like modern take on like the Socratic lecture, question answer kind of thing, where you like the teacher poses a hypothetical scenario, and then the students come up with every single different kind of philosophy or theory of life or humanity to it to see what sticks until you kind of find the best one at the end. That's kind of what it felt like to me. I could see this text being taught in like an entry-level philosophy class kind of thing, where they pick apart people's theories of life, you know? And it's posing a particular theory of humanity as well, which I was sort of noodling over in my mind, like, do I 100% agree with this or anything, you know? So yeah, thought-provoking, pretty. It's very whimsical visually and in terms of the dialogue a lot of the time, even if it was like really dark stuff happening. So it was a good time, but definitely did not like savor it the way that you did.
Yeah, comics are both a delight because they're so easy to read, but also like can be so rich. Like there's just so much you can like pack into them that, yeah, I think I've probably reread comics at a higher rate than I will book. But yeah, when you get like sucked into a good story, like I can't even look at the details. I'm not even looking at the pictures. I'm just like reading it's like, yeah, when you get really into a novel and you're just skipping for the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I don't know who's standing where and what they're doing, but I gotta know what's happening. Okay, so a little bit about our author and illustrator. Charles Soule is a novelist, comic book writer, musician, and former attorney. He got his undergraduate degree in Asian and Middle Eastern studies with a concentration in Chinese language and history, which I found as an interesting tidbit because he does have Chinese characters who are speaking Mandarin, but it's always marked as like translated from Mandarin. So anyways, I thought that was interesting. And it informed his future career, which was as an immigration lawyer. He graduated from Columbia Law School in 2000, but within that first decade or so, he started writing in his free time. So he published his first graphic novel in 2009, and he developed this very prolific comic career working with like DC and Marvel and a bunch of other presses while still practicing immigration law.
Oh, wow.
He eventually did leave his legal career in 2016, 2017 to write full-time. He is best known for writing Daredevil, She-Hulk, Death of Wolverine, and various Star Wars comics. He's also known for writing creator-owned series, so these are ones he owns all the IP for. 8 Billion Genies and Curse Words, both of those illustrated with Ryan Browne. He wrote Undiscovered Country with Scott Snyder and Giuseppe Camuncoli. A whole long list. He also served, I like this tidbit, he served as a legal consultant for the TV show She-Hulk to get like...
Oh yeah, because she's a lawyer, isn't she?
Yeah. Give feedback if the courtroom scenes were like accurate.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Which
fun.
is also really cool that he wrote a lot of She-Hulk. So he's like, had a big hand in that. So it's like kind of cool. They're like, we found an actual attorney to write our Marvel story about an attorney. Charles Soule has also written 3 novels. One came out earlier this year. I don't know what they're about. Yeah, he's a busy guy. Ryan Browne is the illustrator. He lives in Portage Park.
Wow!
A neighborhood of Chicago. He lives with his wife, 2 kids, and a cat, Simon, who apparently makes some appearances in 8 Billion Genies. I read that today, and I didn't have a chance to flip back and see if I can find the cat hidden anywhere, but...
That's so fun.
Fun little Easter egg. He has been a freelance comic writer and artist for a bit over a decade. Soule and Browne met each other at New York Comic Con while Browne was in the time of his life that he was writing, drawing, and self-publishing his own comic, God Hates Astronauts, which... The issue, since I bought each issue as it was published, in the back they've got like promotion for their other work. And the God Hates Astronauts like cover art is so, I don't know what's going on in it, but it looks really fun. His cat, Simon, makes an appearance.
Does he just put his cat in every single comic?
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Yeah. The 2 hit it off as friends, and they would meet up during the holidays each year because they both learned that they had family in Michigan. They're both from
Oh.
Michigan. So they would meet up and hang out and whatnot. Eventually, they collaborated on Curse Words, which they published with Image in 2017, 2019. And there's an article in Block Club Chicago, which I love. Browne talks about how he was kind of playing with the idea of 8 Billion Genies for a while, like the kind of question you ask a friend over drinks at a bar, like, okay, if everyone got a genie and you got one wish, like, what would you wish for? And so he bounced this idea around with Charles, and eventually Soule was like, I'm going to figure out what happens. Like, what if everyone had a genie? Like, I'm going to figure it out. So the first issue was released in May 2022, and issue 8 came out just shy of a year later in April 23, and then they released it in a single bound volume in July. And, I mean, it was like a big hit. Like, the first issue came out, and it, like, blew up. And, you know, Amazon's always looking to get their hands on rights to things, so in June 22, the second issue had just been released. They already bought the rights. Of course, with the writer strikes, things are delayed. Who knows when it's actually ever going to be anything?
Amazon was the one who adapted Paper Girls and then refused to promote it, and so then canceled it after the first season because they are garbage people.
Yeah, I'm like sad that it's Amazon of all people. So we'll see if they ever do anything with it and if we like it. Oh, a few other tidbits. So while I was learning more about Ryan Browne as an artist and his life, I realized there's a bunch of little tiny Easter eggs all throughout the series. There's one scene in Hope's Hollow where there's a beer tent. It's Half Acre, which is like a famous Chicago brewery. Apparently, Half Acre survives G-Day.
That's so
and they set up a beer tent in Hope's Hollow. And in Fun City, there's a big banner because it's an art city and everyone's creating things. And one of the banners is Ryan Browne's first ever publication, Smoke and Mirrors. I remember seeing it in the issue last night when I was rereading. I'm like, this is like prominent enough to read.
Yeah.
But it's not like a joke. Like a lot of the little text that's hidden in the background is like jokey, or it's like Snopple instead of Snapple. It's like off-brand little jokes. But I'm like, Smoke and Mirrors, like this isn't like a joke. And then I found out today that was his first comic that he published. So
cute.
Yeah.
I love that. This type of art really demands that you like spend time with it and like comb back over it several times and like look in the background. Like what I do with Our Flag Means Death, where I rewatch it. Like where I rewatch it and every time I like follow a different character or I check a different part of the screen just to see like I wasn't looking over there last time. I need to see what's back there. And it's usually something hilarious.
Yeah, this series definitely rewards a reread. There's like so much more hidden in there.
Okay, so I organized my summary by character clumps, because that's how you had it written out, and I was like, actually, this would be very useful, because they all have kind of their own storylines. So we start off with Will Williams. He's the owner of this bar, and he seems like just kind of a background character, but it turns out that he is the genie who granted the last remaining wish in sort of the previous genie cycle, and so he got to live as a human in this cycle, and so he lived 1 million lifetimes to try and figure out like what humanity should do to kind of fix the cycle. And at a certain point he was like, I'm tired, everything's about to go down in a few decades, so he's like, I'm gonna open a bar in Michigan. And so when the genies appear, there's a few people, sort of collection of characters in his bar, and so the first thing he does is he wishes that none of the wishes outside the bar impact anyone inside. And so he creates this kind of haven for all the characters inside to figure out what to do next. He's sort of the closest you can get to kind of a god or a wise, you know...
He's the wizard!
He's the wizard! Yes, exactly. So the first collection of characters in that little bubble is the Green family. We have Ed, June, and Robbie. So Robbie and his alcoholic father, Ed, get stuck in the bar because Ed is drinking away his pain on Robbie's 12th birthday.
Not a good dad move.
Not a good dad move, for sure. So when the genies appear, Ed does some self-reflection, and he wishes back his dead wife so that his son can have their whole family together. And she becomes a remnant, which is like a full person, but they're sort of tied to the wisher who wished them back. They're happy together for a short time, but because... Oh, his wife is named June. Because June's life is so precarious, Robbie sort of wishes himself to be like a superhero, basically, so that he can keep them safe and sort of fight for a safe space for them to be in. So he spends several years sort of clearing out all these people who turn themselves into supervillains, and then goes to work for this creepy culty guy called the Idea Man in order to like earn a place for his parents to live in this haven that the Idea Man has created. And he gets very jaded and ugh. But eventually he is able to bring his parents there. And they live there for a very long time, and things are fine, I guess. But when his dad, Ed, dies, right? And so June's about to disappear because she's a remnant. She isn't impacted by the Idea Man. And so she like grabs her son, Robbie, and she's like, Robbie, this guy is bad news. You need to not listen to him. And so she poof disappears. And so then Robbie sort of figures out how to get himself free from the Idea Man and ends up setting up, in his later years, ends up setting up his own kind of community that's more of a safe haven for everyone. And he dies beloved by all.
Robbie's one of my favorite characters. Like,
Yeah.
not the most interesting story for me,
Mm-hmm.
but he just seems to have a heart of gold. And we get to watch him, like, go through some, like, childhood trauma, but, like, grow and make a difference in his community. And he doesn't get too down for too long, you know? Yeah, he has a happy ending.
So then we have the Zhang family. There's Wang and Li Feng, and then their little baby, Ting Shu, who also goes by Betty later. So Wang and Li Feng end up in Will's bar by mistake. They're there to settle some shady business with someone in a different bar with a similar name. But through Will's protection and ability to speak Chinese, they are sort of given the opportunity to give birth to their daughter, Ting Shu, in safety, which is a big deal, and then sort of set off for a community where their daughter's wish will not be wasted, because she's born with a wish, which is weird. But once she turns a certain age and is more conscious, they don't want her to waste her wish. And so they find this fortress in which children's wishes are kind of locked until they turn 25. And Ting Shu, or who at this point is going by Betty, she and all the other young people in this area get really resentful. And so at a certain point, they all sort of revolt and decide to leave. But because they're the only ones with the wishes, it leaves their home really vulnerable. And so it gets attacked and destroyed by the Idea Man. And so Betty's mom's sort of dying wish is for Betty to live, which has the accidental consequence of Betty being immortal. And so, you know, she sort of realizes as her parents are dying that they did really love her, but she has a really complicated relationship with them, and she's really resentful of the wishes. And so she takes her dad's armor and she goes around killing everyone who has wishes left so that she can be the last one to make a wish, so that she can try and fix everything. But then towards the end, she gets back to the bar where Will and a character, Daisy, who I'm about to talk about, she hears from Will what the world was like before, and she realizes that, like, maybe she shouldn't be the one to have the last wish. Maybe there's someone who knows more than she does. And so that brings us to the Bada Bangs. This is a band of Brian, Alex, and Daisy, who start the day thinking that it's just going to be a shitty gig at like an empty bar. And they've got kind of an unresolved love triangle going on where like Daisy's in love with Brian, but she doesn't know Brian's gay somehow, and Alex is in love with Daisy.
It sounds like Brian has just started rehearsing with them.
Ah.
And this is like one of his earliest gigs. Because him and Alex have a chat at the bar of like, we don't actually really know each other.
Right.
Like, let me tell you about myself.
I did not fully catch that.
Yeah, because I remember thinking that was weird too the first time I read it. Because I was like, Daisy, do you not even know your friend?
Yeah.
That apparently you have a crush on? But it's like, oh, he's
new.
He's new. Yeah. He's like played a couple of gigs with them, I think.
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, so then they get trapped, right, in this bar where they're supposed to have this gig with this complicated love triangle thing, and the tension of that gets broken pretty early on. And so instead, they decide to sort of work through their issues and use it as a chance to like get really, really good as a band. So they like play for everyone every night, and they're like constantly practicing because like what else is there to do? But at a certain point, they want to kind of have more of a community. So eventually, they make their way to this sort of flying community that's all just artists, and you have to like audition to get in. And so because they have 2 wishes left between the 3 of them, they are sort of able to get in by the skin of their teeth. But basically what they do is they use one of their remaining wishes to wish that all three of them will be tied to this one shared wish, the final wish. And so they're all sort of tied together permanently so they can stay together until they die. So they all end up in this community, and they form relationships and live a very happy life. And then Daisy ends up being the last one left with the wish after the two boys die. And so it ends up prolonging her life hundreds of years. And so she spends the last century or so with Will Williams in his bar, listening to his stories and learning what he's learned. And so using her life experience and Will's knowledge, she's the one who ends up making the last remaining wish for all humanity to love the way they want to be loved, which sort of breaks this genie cycle forever. And then we're the final page is the population's 8 billion and 1, and Genie's 1? Genie's 0?
Genie's 0. So yeah, the concept was that once the population reached 8 billion people, the genies would all pop up. Mm-hmm. Because there would be so much want and desire in the world, the world could not contain it. And so the genies would come to kind of reset the cycle and give everyone what they want, but inevitably it would end up destroying a lot of things. But because her wish was that everyone would love the way they want to be loved, there isn't an excess of want and desire because everyone is getting their cups filled. There's some analogy with a cup with a hole in the bottom and it's all draining out all the time. But now everyone has little stoppers in their love buckets.
Stoppers in their
they get loved the way they want to be loved. So anyways, the population hits 8 billion and 1, and no genies pop up. So it's the earth is glowing and pretty, and we've saved everything.
In her bag, skin glowing.
Okay, so to start off our discussion, I want to ask you this. If 8 billion genies showed up, everyone has a genie. You get one wish. You cannot wish for more wishes. Rules of the book apply. So that's literally the only rule. They take your intention to heart when fulfilling your wish. What do you do?
See, so when we were talking about this, I was getting into quite a lot of detail about how frustrated I was about the lack of clarity when the genies appear.
You wanted one whole issue where the genies explain how it works, and instead you get it in little bits here and there throughout the 8 issues.
Yeah, which from a storytelling perspective makes sense. It would be very boring to just sort of info dump all the information, but I was so frustrated to learn later on in the story that people could do certain things with their genies that people at the beginning of the story did not know. And I was like, well, if they didn't know they could do that, then they would have chosen something different if they had understood that. But I also have this thing where I got so freaked out when people just started talking to their genies, because it was the first thing you say is going to be your wish. And they're going to misinterpret it. They're going to start, misinterpreting what you say. And so I got really anxious on behalf of the people who were talking and asking their genie questions and stuff. So I was like, what if that's your wish? Every time someone spoke to their genie, I had a little moment, because so I just know for myself, I would be silent. From that minute on, I would not say a goddamn word. I would be locked down and would be trying to get a hold of all my friends and family and trying to strategize with them to figure out what to do with our wishes. Because we don't want to all wish for the same thing, but we want to collectively have a better life. So let's figure this shit out, And then I would brainstorm and journal and write down all of my options to try and figure out where I fit into this network and what I want to do. And I think I would be super, super anxious because something we'll talk about later, the situation in which I'm wishing would be changing constantly. So if I waited a day, suddenly the whole world's different. I'm okay, well, what I would have wanted yesterday is not what I would want now. And so what if I don't want it tomorrow? What if it's not helpful anymore? What if it doesn't help anyone? What if it doesn't help me? What if we're not happy in it? And so I would have spiraled, I think. I think I would be not talking. I would be freaking out. I don't know what I would be doing. I like to think I would be smart about it, but I don't know if I would be. I think I would be paralyzed because I'm one of those people where if you ask me what my favorite movie is, I immediately forget every single movie that exists. If you put a genie in front of my face and say, what do you want? I immediately forget anything I've ever wanted in my entire life. And so I would be paralyzed. So I would need to just keep living my life and talk. I would be texting you being Victoria, what do I want? And you'd be I don't know. I think that might be my first move. I think I would text you, Victoria, what do I want? And I don't know if you would have chosen either, but maybe you'd be like, well, I wished for this, so maybe you could do something similar, and I don't know. I don't know if I ever would, unless me and like other people I cared about sort of came together and made a game plan. And so if I knew where I fit within at least that immediate context of like, you know, those like 12 people, 4 people, whoever, I think I could make a wish that way. But I don't know what it would be.
Kind of like a board game when you sit down and it's a new game and you're learning how the strategy works. Mm-hmm. And you just have to start taking turns because you're just like, I don't know how this game works.
Yes.
Or that the game, you have like 25 options on your turn and you just sit there paralyzed because you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's how this feels, but like on a way more intense level if this was actually happening.
But like if you don't act, like you could just die because of someone else's wish. That's terrifying.
I would say if this happened, I'd be like, oh, thank God I read 8 Billion Genies. And
you're prepared.
I would hopefully be with someone I love that we could game plan in a short instance. Be like, I'm saving my wish. You wish for, like, this house is a safe haven that cannot be attached by wishes. Like, all of our loved ones can teleport here at will. And the basement is endlessly full of food and resources and medicine, anything we could need to, like, survive for the next generation. Or something, like, ridiculous, where it's like one person battle down the hatches and one person keep the option open. And then, like you said, use like a community system. But it's hard because so much of this book deals with, is it selfish or selfless? Some of these choices people are making. Mm-hmm. Like, is it selfless to sacrifice yourself? Or is it selfish because you are imposing what you think is best in this situation? Or you want to be the hero, or you want to be the person making the decision. And yeah, I think that would also be hard to maneuver.
Yeah.
Because I think my instinct, before reading this and really diving into how these genies operate, I would think my genie would be pretty kind. It would like to listen to my actual feelings. But I would be scared to make a wish initially because of the trickster kind of folklore that is often associated with genies, where like, okay, I wish all my family was here right now. And it's like, I accidentally wish that we can never be apart or something like that. It's like, joke's on you. Now your family has to be in the same room with you for the rest of your life. And you're like, this is not going to go well.
Yeah. We have this sort of colloquial understanding of genies, particularly. I mean, this is, you know, a text written by Americans from a very common hypothetical posed by American friends to each other. And we're pulling from this sort of idea of genies in popular culture that we get wish granter, trickster characters.
What we understand as genies kind of come from this idea of the jinn, spelled like Jinn or Djinn, which date back to like, I don't know, 2000 BC. Something like that, in like pre-Islamic Arabian origins. And then they end up being mentioned multiple times in the Quran. And there are lots of people who understand the jinn as some sort of like spiritual entity that does exist. Like they're not angels, they're not demons, but they're the jinn. There's a lot of mentions of them throughout the Quran and in Islamic folklore. They come up in Islamic art, and they eventually kind of make their way into an European storytelling through 1001 Nights. However, a lot of it came from the French translator kind of coming up with some new stories. So some of the ones that we're like really familiar with, one source I read was talking about how Aladdin the Magic Lamp was kind of like Europeanized and has much more to do with the European...
He took some liberties as a translator. Yeah. And he's also the one who picked the spelling of genie as genie, Genie, as well.
Yeah, which then connects to our like Latin roots of the word genius. So originally they didn't have that connection, but by him choosing that spelling, he kind of like created that connection. Mm-hmm. So that's where we kind of get them initially. And then we see them come up more and more in like films that take place in like Arabian settings.
Vaguely Middle Eastern setting.
Which apparently, I didn't know this, in the original Aladdin story, Aladdin is Chinese.
Oh.
And it's interesting. And so some of these initial ideas of like the genie being in an object come from these like pre-Islamic folklore and kind of come through Islamic folklore as well. And so a lot of these pieces are kind of like brought in from a lot of different places. But in like American culture, we think of like Aladdin, the Disney movie, and I Dream of Jeannie, the television show. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of more of the tradition, it seems, that we're following in, is this kind of idea of like, it grants you wishes, which is like, seems to be a small part, in my understanding, of the Islamic jinn. but it becomes like the focal point of the westernized, like European American
That's
pop
what we
culture
really
genie.
latched onto, for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like the main thing of what a djinn is. There's a lot of analysis of the figure of the genie in sort of European and American popular culture as this kind of Orientalist symbol. So if we're thinking of Orientalism, we're thinking of Edward Said, who's a Palestinian American, who he was one of the first ones to articulate how the quote-unquote West constructs themselves by constructing this imaginary version of the quote-unquote East, which really was like the Islamic world. So you really see that with how we portray genies. So for female genies, we get this sort of subservient object of desire, and with male genies, they're these sort of sly tricksters. And they're often a sort of a counterpoint to Western cultures to sort of analyze our institutions and our practices. It's interesting to see them the way that they're used in 8 Billion Genies, because it really arose out of these sort of hypotheticals of like, oh, a genie appears, you get 3 wishes, what are you wishing for, kind of thing. That it sort of appears in our conversations without context. The figure of the genie just is like a thing now. So you can see how, like, the writer visually avoid a lot of the kind of Orientalist stereotypes, where the genies just take on the form of, like, a smoky form of whoever they are the wish for.
Right. Yeah, it was a choice, definitely, to make these genies, like, look like a bit of the wisher, instead of having some, like, cliche genie that has maybe some nods towards Islamic folklore at best, or at worst, just like completely appropriating certain stories and ideas. And I thought that was really smart. I think it also gets away from the kind of gender stereotypes around genies, right? So like a female genie is often very like sexy and alluring, and like is even used in a lot of these folktales of like the genie will seduce the man and take energy from his soul by becoming an attractive woman to have sex with him. And so it removes that by making the genies like mirror the wisher. So if the wisher has a specific gender presentation, the genie has something like it. But otherwise, they don't seem to take a specific form. And Will Williams, as a human genie, takes a lot of forms, including all different genders. And we get like a blast from the past as we travel with him through the 800 years of his human life. And we see him take a lot of different forms. Mostly men, but a lot of women forms too.
Different races, different parts of the world. I mean, the fact that they're illustrated to be kind of smoky, you know, that was something I kind of latched onto when I was doing some research of like, that they can be walking among us, they can take on human form, they can have families and lives and stuff, but they're technically made of smoke.
Kids. Yeah.
They can have kids, yeah. And so I feel like they got both of those elements. They got Will Williams, who's very much like a human who has had children, but that they're also, the little floating genies are like kind of made to look like they're made of smoke. And they also, they're like conversationalists who have thoughts and opinions about who they're working with, and like they have interpretive power, but they also are trapped by this cycle. They are trapped. So I feel like that's something we also have in the figure of the genie, is like they have to do what you say, they're yours. You sort of have trapped them in a way.
Yeah, we get that a lot with like the Disney Aladdin, right? He's like a slave to whoever opens the lamp, and at the end his big thing is Aladdin promises to wish that he would be free. Yeah, I didn't really make that connection until now that we're talking of like, these genies are also trapped in the cycle. There is a higher cosmic power that is never given any sort of description, but like the cosmic powers have set it up this way. And the genie that grants the last wish gets to have the reward, is the reward of being a human. And so it's not that all the genies can go in between human and genie form. It's that Will Williams, because he was the last wish granter in the previous cycle, gets to have the human experience. Because he even mentions how like the genies are curious and they're a little like jealous of the humans who get to like eat food and have sex and live lives.
And their true form is like this kind of cosmic tree thing that we see a bit at the end.
I mean, that was weird to me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that connected anywhere. I was like, okay, that looks really cool, but like,
yeah,
what?
That was a choice.
I see these genies as like this in between of I'm a person with personality and thoughts and emotions and feelings. And so when the idea man is being like an asshole, they can all be like, fuck you, we don't like you, even though we do have to do what you say.
Yeah.
But they also are interpreters. Like they have a lot of power as well, because not only are they granting the wish, but they can be like, oh, I see your heart and I'm going to, Robbie cares so much about his family. We're going to give him like really superpowers. Like he is like one of the strongest super powered person, even though so many people wish to be powered. And I really we start to get like a glimmer of like what they care about in issue 2 when Ed wishes to bring June back. Someone asks, I think it was Alex, why are you guys so excited? Why are you clapping? Because all the genies in the room are clapping. And the genie says, wishing is an art. It brings us joy to see it practiced well. Like, they have an opinion, they have an angle, but there's only so much they can do to influence the outcome. And even Will himself realizes through his 800 years of existence as a human, he's not there to make that last wish. He's there to influence and, like, kind of guide the outcome.
They have certain things that they want people, they have wishes. Like, they wish people would wish a particular way, but they don't try to influence them in any way unless the wisher asks questions. But sometimes they do jump in. I got a little confused on, like, I guess maybe you could explain it by they would take on the personality a bit of the person, of the wisher. So, like, maybe that's why some of them would provide more details or would jump in or would be more helpful or would be assholes. I don't know. But it felt very inconsistent of, like, how they intervened.
Do you have an example?
Like, I remember when the three amigos, the band.
Yes.
The Badabangs, they almost die in the forest from some crazy person, and one of their wishes jumps in, I think without them prompting him at all. Like, would you like to know someplace to go? And they're like, oh yes, please, tell us where to go.
Yes, so there are some moments where they do feel like they're intervening more than maybe they would. So for example, when the three band members are in the woods and they're shot at, Daisy, who does not have a wish, she yells at the genies because they're ducking and covering. Oh, for Christ's sake, can you get like really bright? The wish, not her wishes, absolutely. And so she's like, count to 3, then get up there and do it. 1, 2, 3. He goes up and into like mega bright light, which hurts the people with the guns because they've got night vision goggles on. And I'm like, okay, so you can tell the wish what to do?
Yeah, even if it's not your wish.
Not your wish, and it's not like wish go, like genie go away, genie come back. Which is what they've already established you can do with a genie. And so it's like, okay, so these genies have, like, befriended them enough that they will respond to Daisy and, like, help protect their lives.
Yeah.
Which I get is still in line with the genies' goals, because they want to fulfill a wish. Right? So we have one genie who, he's assigned to the Idea Man. It's not the Idea Man's original genie, because he used that genie to wish that everyone would believe in him. And the Idea Man goes flying off into the moon that has arms and can eat things. And the genie's like, oh man, I never got to like grant a wish. But he's like, it's okay, this probably ended for the best. And he like poof disappears. And so yeah, it seems like maybe in this case you could argue like protecting their lives is in the wish's interest or in the genie's interest as well.
Yeah. And it seemed important in the kind of original Islamic folklore that they are beings of free will. And so it's kind of tricky to figure out because in a certain way they're a sort of collective will. And they're all aware of what all the other wishes are doing at all times. They can kind of see everywhere and they're all connected to each other. And so they're not quite individualized, but they are. And do they have individual opinions or not? Do they have something they want or not? Because they want the cycle to be over. I don't know. It's a very tricky characterization. It felt like at certain points the author was just like, well, I need the genies to be able to do this so they can. You know, like, I need characters to be able to know what's going on the other side of the world when the internet is down. So the genies can just see each other and they can ask their genie, hey, what's going on over here? And they're like, oh, well, this is happening. Do you want to go there? And they're like, oh, yes, please. And it, like, you know, it's sort of a function of the storytelling in a certain way. But all throughout, my brain was like trying to figure out, how does this work?
Yes.
Because
Julia really likes rules. She really likes rules in fantasy. Get her on time travel. I know we've done an episode on this before, but like, it matters.
It does.
And I agree. I was a little more okay with the hand wavy. I was like, yeah.
I was like okay enough with it that I could like enjoy myself and carry on. But like as someone who would hypothetically be in the scenario, that would drive me nuts. That
You'd be the one that you would like lock yourself in the basement with your genie and be like, you need to tell me everything right now. It's like, I will be taking notes. We're in this together. I want to make a really good wish, so I need all the thoughts.
Give me the 411. Update me on the last 8 centuries. Go.
Speaking of what to do with your wish.
Yeah.
I found this edition wish locking was super interesting. I hadn't come across this in any genie stories before.
Yeah.
And it's more of like a psychological reading of a genie interaction.
Yeah.
You know, like what happens when you are in a state that you know the world is always changing and you don't know if you will need your wish more in the future and you're wish locked. You can't make a wish. You're in high stress situations and you can't make a wish. So we see this with Alex and Brian when LaFang is in childbirth and she's hemorrhaging and like everyone's yelling at them because they actually have their wishes still, like save their lives. Like you can do something. Luckily, her and the baby are fine in the end. And they're like, oh good, we didn't have to use our wishes. And everyone's pissed because they were like, you were going to let them die because you couldn't wish.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. It takes the incident in the woods where Daisy's like, oh my gosh, why didn't you use your wish? We were under gunfire.
Yeah.
That's when one of the genies pipes up and they're like, actually, there's a word for this I can explain. Then they kind of understand it as a psychological condition and Daisy's like more at peace with like, I'm so sorry you're in this situation instead of like, you assholes, you can't even use your wish to save your own life, save our lives, save someone else's life.
Yeah. It's like incorporating, there's a lot of kind of therapy speak and psychology speak that has sort of infiltrated a lot of how millennials talk to each other now. And it felt very much like that, where it was like, you know, like you said, they're taking a kind of psychological read on it. But it's absolutely, it felt so smart to me because I was like, oh, of course that would happen. Like,
right. When
you're in a high stress situation and you have to want something and you have to make a split second decision, like there's so many people who would not be able to do that.
It's like the fight, flight, freeze. And it's the people who are going to freeze, like who are wish locked.
Like, part of what's so stressful about the wishes is that, like, within the first, like, 8 minutes, 8 hours, right, the world drastically changes. And there's a situation where Wong has to, he has something he has to do. He has some, like, old business from how the world used to be to sort of wrap up, which he probably didn't need to do. But it means that he sort of leaves their sort of safe place, and we get to experience alongside him what the world looks like now outside and how crazy and dangerous it is. And so when he comes back, he sort of informs everyone like how different the world is, and he advises them like, when you wish, think of the world that is, not the world that was, because he sees how unhelpful so many people's wishes were. They wished for something that they really wanted in how the world used to be, and now it is kind of meaningless, like money.
Yeah, because he has an interaction with a guy who looks like he's from like the 40s. The guy's like, can you help me? And he's like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I have my own family to care for. And he's like, I wish to be young again, but now I don't know how to get to my family.
Yeah.
Wong is like, if you're here when I come back, I'll take you with me. And it seems like the guy was not there when he went back. And yeah, I think that plays into a lot of that wish locking. Like, if you don't know what the world is going to become, and you didn't use your wish in the first little bit, then you're like, oh gosh, like what else could I wish for?
Yeah.
What if I wish for something that comes back to bite us or is like helpful for like a little bit, but down the line, I'm going to really wish I wished for something else.
Or like so many people's wishes get kind of undone.
Yeah.
They get reversed, they get canceled out. Like, you think about the guy, the climate scientist in the Arctic who uses his wish to like wish that the planet would go back to how it was pre-industrial CO2 levels or something like that. And then the idea man just completely decimates the planet except for the protected areas. And so then like I guess he fixed CO2 levels, but everything else is screwed, you know? So it's like...
But the whole world is like nuclear radiation. That's like, okay, right. Yeah, this guy fixed climate change for the first like 8 years. And then the idea man like wiped it out.
So then, like, that would be an amazing thing to wish for the old world. But for the world as it is, that's not very helpful. And so it, like, I feel like what they're kind of pushing you towards is that really comes down to people, right? The people, the love in your life is what will always matter, regardless of circumstances. And so you need to make a wish that's, like, about that in some way so that you can continue to live lives regardless of what's happening around you.
And we see some of those situations where, like, Wong and LeFang, like, they made wonderful wishes, right? Like, Wong wishes to have everything he needs to protect his family. So he gets this, like, super suit and this, like, crazy, like, ray gun knife thing that's really cool. And he can do a lot of protecting. And even when he dies, because the suit was to protect his family, the suit remains, which in most cases, people's things that they wish for disappear when they die. And that suit, plus LeFang being like, I wish that my daughter would survive, means that Betty gets basically eternal life. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And she, like, you know, goes on her vendetta for years, killing off all the people with wishes, or forcing them to use their wish. And, like, yeah, there's even some of the, like, more positive wishes that seem to be in line with this idea of, like, relationships and love and how you care for those in your community matter most. Even then, sometimes it's, like, messy.
Like, I guess there's no right answer. Even with that, like, final wish, you know, they keep talking about, like, oh, what is the perfect wish? What is the perfect wish? You know, Daisy gets to make it at the end, what they think is the perfect wish. But that only works if it's the very last wish.
Right.
So, like, that's not really helpful for anyone else, like, because it could just get undone by someone else's wish or something. It's kind of an impossible situation. But one of the times that they do really, like you mentioned when they're clapping, right? When the genies love wishes being done well, is when Ed brings back his wife for his son, right? I mentioned it a bit earlier, but she becomes a remnant. And this was something else that they added that I have not seen. Well, every kind of genie lore, at least in the kind of Western tradition, deals with bringing people back from the dead in some way. But most of the time, the way that they deal with it is they bring back people as, like, you know, shells of themselves, or they're kind of actively melting, or they're kind of some kind of zombie. You know what I mean? Like, there's some kind of caveat.
It's always like, and you wish you didn't do that.
Yes.
It's like, you brought her back and now she's miserable. Or, like, it's not good for anyone. Or they just bar it out completely. You know, they'll be like, that's not possible with our magic. But in this one, we can. And it's very interesting. I think they did it in a really fascinating way that wasn't too hand-wavy, but it was just hand-wavy enough that I could just, like, lean into June as a character instead of wondering, like, how does she feel? And the genies do mention that, like, she doesn't remember, like, this isn't June as if she's been dead for a long time and has been missing them. This is, like, as if June came back in her body that was healthy. As, like, this June in front of them doesn't have a memory of, like, blackness or an afterlife or whatever June believed in, but she's just, like, back in her full self.
But that's partly because of Ed's intention with his wish. Right? His intention is that his son have a mother, and so they bring her back in sort of her healthy, alert self. I wonder if it's dependent on how well the wisher knew the person they wished back. Because at a certain point, remnants come in who are Jim Morrison,
Ernest Hemingway,
and Dorothy Parker. And they're just, like, caricatures of themselves. They're just like, another drink, and Jim Morrison's just, like, nonstop singing. And they're just kind of annoying. And then at a certain point, they just go poof, because the person who wished for them dies. And so they're kind of like they are people, but they're not as fully a person as June is. Like, June is a proper character, and she has a lot of independent agency from her husband.
Okay, now that you say that, though, this might be a really dark reading, but because she's wished back as Robbie's mother, like, there's some problematic things, right? June comes back, and Ed has been an alcoholic who isn't taking care of their son. June doesn't get mad at Ed. They have, like, disagreements, but June is always Robbie's mother, and they were always a family. And I wonder if he made a really good wish to support Robbie, but June is still a remnant, and she's looking out for Robbie, and we see this as, like, the powerful, awesome mother. But if June was real, like a real human who, like, maybe they were divorced, not dead. She comes back and she's like, you did what? We're here on our son's 12th birthday and you're passed out drunk at the bar.
She's not mad at him.
She's not mad at him.
That's a good point.
In the same way that these other remnants, like Dorothy Parker and Ernest Hemingway, were wished back because some librarian wanted to have drinks with, like, two literary people. She thought it'd be fun. Like, what would it be like to have drinks with them? So, of course, this Ernest Hemingway and Dorothy Parker, all they want to do is drink because they were wished back as people who drink. Oh, dang, I thought June was so great, and now I'm like, does June have agency?
Oh, shit!
Oh, shit. Oh, man. I love when we talk so long about a book that I have completely new reads of it.
Oh, no! That's sad, but I guess also it still had a positive outcome, so it was still a good wish? Is that the point?
I think so. I think that's the point. It's also interesting because, okay, we have 3 characters who I want a whole, like, spin-off issue of the Batabangs in the 80s town.
Yes.
Because that was one of the most emotional parts of the series for me, is when Mrs. Gutierrez, the woman who wished this town from the 80s, she had like the best time of her life from like 20 to 24. So she wished her town back. And so it becomes a safe haven, but it's mostly all remnants except her. And so when the Batabangs show up, she's like, oh my gosh, like it gets a little lonely here. Like, welcome. You're welcome here. And so they practice their music. They get, you know, super influenced by 80s pop punk. They're like having a great time. Brian falls in love.
He falls in love with a remnant.
You only get it in pictures. You get like all these like Polaroids and it says like what day since G-Day. So day 1769. And it's them like with their friends. And it's like, you just get to see them all develop relationships and like care for people. And like Brian's love story is so beautiful. And then Mrs. Gutierrez has like a scene with a doctor, must have some sort of medical diagnosis. She ends up dying. And then the town disappears as the Batabangs are like performing. And Brian is wish-locked and he can't wish quick enough to save his love.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
It was very upsetting. I think that's where I stopped for the day. Like, all right, we'll come back tomorrow. I'm too sad.
Yeah, so even though these remnants, like I'm curious, were they like her best friends so they came back really full of life? Or were they really just periphery remnants? But because it was a whole town of people, they were like dynamic and like full of life. Like we just don't get enough. We don't get like Gutierrez while she's making the wish. We don't get like her genie or any of the genies commenting on it.
Yeah, to me it raises a question of like the genies as interpreters, you know, the way that like we have this common thing of the genie as a trickster, and so they're gonna like skew your words or take them super literally or whatever, so that you're, you know, it's kind of a be careful what you wish for warning, so that like when you get exactly what you wished for, it's not what you wanted or something. That's how it's used a lot. And so then you learn about what really matters. But in this case, sometimes things like that happen where there's sort of unintended consequences of the wish, but the genies are much more interpretive, where they're specifically taking into consideration what the intentions and the feelings and the imagination of the person making the wish. So they're interpreting like thoughts and feelings.
And a lot more of like, is this person doing this for themselves?
Yeah.
Or for others? And so often when a wish is made with others in consideration, the wish is more like generously fulfilled than when it's wished for the individual.
It's interesting when you add that component, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. It makes it much more flexible and more forgiving from a storytelling perspective, from a character perspective, that these genies want someone to wish something good for other people. And so they interpret it in a way that is generous rather than in a way that is like spiteful or literal or something like that. And it's kind of a twist on what we expect.
It kind of feeds into the use of lawyers. So like lawyers, there's a whole group of them in a haven that they get a lot of power because they will write very contractually specific language that the genie does not have room to interpret. Mm-hmm. It has so many clauses and they're all bound. And so we got one scene where the idea man who has paid to have this wish written, we get to watch him wish for the refreshing is what he calls it, which I think is a stupid term, but whatever. And so after he's like nuked everything, he then does the refreshing, and it's got all these clauses to like bring back the land and the foliage and the creatures, but like don't have any creatures in the wrong area. So like we're basically rolling back on invasive species, but he doesn't want any humans to come back, so he excludes them, and it's like he has to sit down with like a cup of water, and he reads it all in one go, and it takes forever, and the genie's like, fine, whatever, here we go. And like, it happens. The wish goes through. So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at language And also learning that Soule is a attorney.
Yeah.
Was really funny. I was like, oh, this checks.
That makes sense.
And I think it kind of leans into the Idea Man as villain because he doesn't respect the genies in the way that a lot of other people do, where he would have a relationship with the genie that the genie would know, like, I know what you want. We'll do it. Instead, he feels the need to, like, manhandle them with his lawyer words.
If you look at how, like, the different points that are highlighted, you can kind of see the background of the creators, right? You can see where their imagination went first, their kind of ideas about humanity, obsession with superheroes. I thought that was... I mean, well, the superhero part is partly, like, their background as superhero comic book creators.
Yeah, and I think it really, like, nods towards their audience too, right? They're writing in a comic book format, and so I'm sure there's a lot of readers who are like, I know exactly which superpower I would go for.
Exactly.
I have studied a lot of them. Like we said already, they bring a very psychological approach to this. And so they use the Powered Age, which is the stint of time where superheroes and supervillains are running around, as a way to begin unpacking, like, childhood trauma. And, like, there's a concern for the mental well-being of, like, what would this do to our mental health? To everyone gets a genie. And a bunch of kids, another heartbreaking scene.
Oh my
is
god,
when Robbie as Sunman is watching his, like, leader superhero die. And Robbie's like, I'm only 12. And the lead superhero is like, I'm only 11. And he's, like, dying. He's bleeding out. And it's like, these are a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Or, like, people who just didn't know what they were asking for. And they, like, spend time with what happens to a superhero who's, like, caused a lot of destruction. Like, Robbie's really torn up with how many people he's killed, whether on his own because he was trying to defeat the bad guys or under the Idea Man's, like, direction. And it, like, really weighs on them. And I think without making it a whole superhero comic, they do spend a bit of time addressing, like, what is that impact when you get to be a superhero with no preamble? It's just like, one day you're a superhero and then you watch everyone you love die.
Yeah. Like, should anyone have that much power? You know, kind of question. And they're like, no. That's kind of the conclusion, is like, no. Especially not kids, you know, who did not really realize what they were asking for. And in a way, it makes the whole thing feel really cruel that, like, kids are being given this wish, then they don't have enough context, enough life experience to understand the impact of what their wish might be. And so you can kind of understand the desire to, like, prevent kids from wishing so that they have more life to live. But obviously there needs to be a lot more nuance to it than that. But, you know, it feels a little cruel to, like, give kids the chance to wish for whatever they want, and they want to be invincible because they've had a hard time or something, and then they don't realize what it'll do to them, and it's really heartbreaking. Like, there's a lot of darkness to this story, but it's painted in this very, like, bright, sparkly, colorful style that you don't really realize, like, billions of people are dying. Like, at the beginning of every single section, there's, like, a kind of quote-unquote cold open. I don't know how else to describe it. And then there's the sort of title card page of, like, how many humans are left and how many genies are left. Like, people are dying.
I think the first 8 seconds, like, 1 million people die.
Yeah.
My first thought is those 1 million people are probably some of the worst people, where people, you know, there's that teenage, or maybe not the worst people, those, like, impulsive wishes where someone's like, I wish you would die. I think it's a lot of that, which is really sad.
Yeah.
There's, like, a angsty teenager who's like, I wish you'd burn in hell, to her parents. And they do, which again is like, Genie, was that really your job?
Did they have to create a hell for that to happen? Are the parents alone in hell forever? Is it just for them? Like, I have so many questions.
They have their own personal hell.
Yeah. Takes that phrase to a whole new level.
I know. But yeah, it's really dark, glossed up in a way that you're like, huh, what would I wish for?
Yeah, they pose it as this, like, cute little scenario, and the genies are so cute, and they're, like, sparkly, and they have these cute little faces, and they're, like, very helpful and thoughtful, but it's, like, really brutal things are happening to everybody. I mean, and the premise of the whole cycle is that it's population control. Like,
well, okay, yes, it's population control. They frame it a little differently. It's like, there's too much desire in the world. Like, too many people have wants that are not being fulfilled. Because remember, in the future, in the next cycle, they are able to surpass 8 billion.
That's true.
But at first glance, it is population control, which is kind of gross.
Yeah.
I think to start wrapping up our discussion a bit, what I really appreciated about this is it's really focused in on the relationships and like the well-being of these 8 individuals. It gives us an entry point. It gives us people to care about. And I appreciate an apocalypse novel from time to time, but it's not complete disaster novel that's like just dealing with like the preppers of like, okay, so the people who had like their bunkers are fine, but now we're just like following people who are trying to find food. Or like we're dealing with what happens when the power grid collapses and like people are learning how to grow crops who have never farmed before. Like we know that's happening in the periphery, but it's not like the sole focus. It's not just how do they survive, it's how they use their wishes. And I think it's a really interesting take on like disaster novel and also an interesting take on Genie's story. Like we talked about, they introduce some new ideas. They kind of explore what genies in our modern context, like how we would respond to them potentially. And I think it's a really fun story to noodle on, but it doesn't like, it's not a kid's story. You know, it's not just like happily ever after. It's like, it deals with a lot of dark stuff. Yeah, I think the one thing, though, that they didn't really touch on, and maybe because we're following a cast of characters who are with each other, is there's not much talk about loneliness. And I think this world would be really lonely.
Yeah. There's that one character when the
Sea Witch.
The Sea Witch. When the Zhang family are trying to get to Argentina and they sail on a boat, I guess, and there's this Sea Witch that they're fighting with. And as Wong kills her, it looks like she's attacking them, but she's really saying, like, please just stay here with me. It's so lonely. And as she's dying, she says, like, why did I wish to be one with the sea? And you're just like, oh my God. So she's been out here alone for 8 years as this, like, sea creature, probably killing people, trying to get them to stay with her. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Or, like, even Mrs. Gutierrez, like, she was kind of lonely. So, like, it gives you the sense that, like, yes, she had created an environment for herself, but the remnants weren't quite enough. You know what I mean? She wanted some, like, real people. So, like, there is a lot of loneliness here. And then I guess at the end, Betty, she's really lonely. And you can sort of see how jaded she is. I mean, she's been alone for a very long time. And has not been very fulfilled in the way that Daisy has. Is not really satisfied with her life. Yeah, you know what's funny is, like, when I finished the story, I kind of thought of it as like a millennial wish fulfillment kind of thing. And now as we're talking about it, I'm like, this is so dark. Like, I don't know. Like, I know that, like, it feels like the kind of, you know, oh, I wish I could just fix everything and start over. It feels like they're really playing that out here. And it gets really, really sad and upsetting. But it's like you don't really experience it that way as you're reading it. It's not until we're talking about it that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, because even though it wraps up in 8 issues, the world is restored, they can, you know, sustain more than 8 billion people. It took 800 years. And I think because we moved through the last 720 years in one issue, it's hard to see how long it took for, like, 800 years is so long. That's like us looking back at the 1200s. So much has changed and so many generations have passed. And that's what had to happen again until we reached the point of, like,
for the
conclusion.
reset.
Yeah, I think as I dig into this more, I also, like you, see it less and less as, like, millennial wish fulfillment of, like, let's just start over. But even a bit more realistic of, like, we're going to go through some shit. And hopefully the humans that survive will make some different choices.
Like, I don't know, you just gotta do your best. And you gotta love the people around you. That's about all you can do. And sometimes it's going to make things better. Sometimes it'll make things worse. And that's scary. That's like the whole... Yeah. But you don't know.
And you don't know if, you know, acting in the future is going to be better than acting now.
Whew. Terrifying. But relatable.
And hopeful.
Yeah, I think so.
Use your wish for good. Make a difference in the world. Love others the way you want to be loved.
So I guess it kind of has to end in a cheesy way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to stomach it as a story.
Yeah. Though I am a little sad for the genies because they seem very fulfilled by being wish fulfillers.
Right.
So I hope wherever they exist in Genie Land, they're just, like, free to be their full genie selves.
Celestial trees.
Yeah, celestial trees.
Like, what are they doing up there? I don't know. I wish them the best. Okay, so you've read a lot more comics than me. So what would you recommend people read after this?
So I mentioned Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chiang, Matt Wilson, and J.R.K. Fletcher. I really, really love that series. It's completely all released, so you can buy the mega volume if you want to read it all. It's just got like the fun colors, and it's set in the 80s, so you have like some fun like vibes, but also like serious and deals with some like very serious topics and time travel. Who doesn't love time travel? Julia approved time travel, honestly.
Julia approved time travel. 100%. It follows the rules.
If you want some superheroes that go a different way, that are outside of the DC Marvel universe, I would read Invincible by Robert Kirkman, illustrated by Cory Walker and Ryan Ottley. I actually really like the TV series. Season 2 came out this summer and I didn't watch it yet because I don't watch TV quickly. But season 1 was phenomenal. For fans of our podcast who maybe are like in the litfic world looking to dip your toe in some like comics, graphic novel things, My Brilliant Friend, Europa publisher, has put out a graphic novel version. The script was written by Chiara Lagini, based with, Elena Ferrante, based off her book, illustrated by Mara Cherry, and translated by Anne Goldstein, who is the translator for all of the English Ferrante translations. And this is one that's been on my to-read list for a while, so I'll shout it out here, but Lore Olympus, it was like a web comic that got published. It's by Rachel Smith, but it just looks so fun, and it's like fun colors and like Greek mythology, but also like serious life topics, and has gotten a lot of positive attention. So every time I'm at the comic book store, I'm like, should I buy volume 1? And it's like, no, next time. But I think now I gotta do it. So I can come back and give it like a full recommend.
Yeah.
Instead of like I don't know, it looks good.
This book made me think of a couple things. Made me think of Into the Woods, the musical / there is a movie version, but the musical's better. But talk about a very dark story about be careful what you wish for.
No spoilers, but when I saw it, I didn't know anything going in. I just saw it as a musical, and I was like, what a great first act. What's the second act going to be? And I was just like,
oh boy.
It was so good. It was so good. It's such a good story. It's wild.
So the first act is like the fairy tales that we know and love, and they sort of end with everyone getting everything that they want. And then the second act is like the very, very dark consequences of everyone getting everything they want. So it's very, very similar story. It also made me think of, there's an episode of the Ologies podcast called Disasterology, which is kind of a newer field of study where people look at like how people respond to disasters. And a lot of the psychology and the data on how people respond to disasters, at least on a local level, is quite different than how Hollywood tends to present it. And so I think even I had some critiques on that level of this story as well. So I think it might be, it's worth giving that a listen if you want to expand your ideas a little more. It also made me think of a book that Victoria gave me called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman.
I forgot I gave that to you. When I saw that in your notes, I was like, what is that book? Tell me about it.
You literally bought it for me. But it's about a young woman who the only place she's ever known is this like cage that she's in with 40 other women that's like patrolled by these men. And at one point this alarm goes off and the cage opens and they just go explore the world, and it's like a post-apocalyptic kind of story where you don't quite know everything and you discover with her. It's a very limited point of view. But yeah, if you want a post-apocalyptic feminist novel, that's a good one. And then I would also throw in, since we had a little nod to Orientalism and maybe we want to educate ourselves a little bit more about Palestine through our favorite medium, literature. Edward Said, who wrote Orientalism, wrote a text in 1979 called The Question of Palestine. Like an excellent sort of, here's all the basics. And then there's a very good novel called Salt Houses by Hala Alian, I believe is her name. So yeah, check that out. So what are you currently? I think we're currently obsessed with the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's Our Flag Means Death Season 2. It's out.
Oh my god.
I'm just really enjoying it. I feel like I'm never a part of a cultural moment, and I'm a part of a cultural moment. It's like when 8 Billion Genies came out, and I read it when it came out. Like, I see why you follow TV shows when they're released, because it is very fun.
Everyone is losing their minds, because it's like, everyone spent so long imagining what this season could be, and it's somehow everything and not at all what you imagined, right? And people are freaking out.
You and I had very long discussions after we watched season 1 for the second time. For me, probably 7th time for you. And we were like, okay, this needs to happen. Like, season 1 spoilers. They'll need to get back together, but there needs to be some healing. There needs to be like, there's going to be some other thing they have to come up against. Like, what's it going to be? And yeah, all those things are happening and none of them are happening. And I'm just like, whoosh. But so much is happening. Like, it's still a good show. Talk about things that reward a second watch too.
Yes. Or third, even. I can't wait to because we're getting them in pieces, and I love that. I love that we're getting a little bit each week. So I'm really excited to go back and watch the whole season once it's all done. It's so fun being here with everybody. We're getting everything we ever hoped and more. What else?
I'm like, there is nothing else.
There is nothing else.
I think I mentioned Normal Gossip last time we recorded because I had listened to 1 episode, and now I have listened to most of the episodes, and I will say it's still a great show. It's a delightful show. It's also revealing to me how much I like gossip. Probably not a surprise to Julia, who lived with me as a roommate for 4 years, but I really do love a story. Tell me the deets.
I was right there with you. The cheese may, I love it.
And then we got a couple of Levain bakeries in Chicago. I think they're in some other big cities too. They popped up recently. They have delightful cookies. And today I got their fall spice chocolate walnut cookie, which, like, props for them for not calling it a pumpkin spice cookie, even though it literally is. Like, they actually could call it pumpkin spice because there's actually pumpkin in the cookie. Now I'm going to go on a tangent about how I feel about the term pumpkin spice, because often some people are referring to the spices that you put with pumpkin, and some people refer to pumpkin that is spiced. And this is fully a pumpkin that is spiced chocolate walnut cookie. That's how the cookie crumbles.
This is how the cookie crumbles.
What do you have time for aside from our flag mean stuff?
Not much. Let me be honest. I did manage to watch the final season of Nora from Queens, which came out a few months ago now. Really loved it. And then there's so much music that dropped in like the last week, or that I remembered existed in the last week. So there's Natalia Lafourcade's album from last year, De Todas las Flores, Something to Give Each Other by Troye Sivan, In the Mood by Huyen, which Victoria needs to listen to. I guarantee you will love it. It's like Victoria music.
Great.
The album should just say, an album for Victoria, but in Korean. There's Javelin by Sufjan Stevens, which will...
Oh gosh.
Girl. All of us deconstructed girlies had a good cry about that one. Free Fall by TXT, and then The Rest by Boy Genius. So Boy Genius, there's like 4 tracks that they didn't put on their original album that they've released as an EP. All of this music that I'm suggesting, I love the majority of these albums. So much good music has fallen in my lap in the last week, and I can't listen to it all. It's overwhelming. I'm really just listening to these albums in between rewatching episodes of Our Flag Means Death.
Thursday is now officially the longest day of the week, because they drop Pacific time at midnight, which is a very reasonable hour to stay up and watch TV. That's 2 a.m. where I'm at. I'm not staying up for that. So I wake up.
You wake up to a bunch of texts from me.
To so many texts that I can't look at. Because we've agreed that she can spoil things, but then I have to watch within that day to because otherwise we can't not communicate.
I send them in WhatsApp, and then if she hasn't watched it yet, I'll text her in the regular chat so that she doesn't have to look at it.
It's very respectful. I appreciate it. But I have not noticed how many hours there are on Thursday, because I rarely have time to watch until late Thursday night.
I think you should just set a meeting for yourself that's about an hour long. On
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, you have a meeting from 10 to 11.
I'm sorry, I have a hard stop at 10. I have to leave this meeting. Yeah, just catching up with Ed. Thank you for listening to Book Club with Julia and Victoria. We would love to hear your thoughts on this book or the topic we discuss, so you can share your review and recommendations with us on Instagram at Book Club with JV, on our website, bookclubwithjv.com, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also visit our website for show notes with links to all of the recommendations and the things bringing us joy. If you don't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever podcast platform you are listening on so that you can be notified when our next episode is released. This episode was co-hosted and produced by myself, Victoria Bruick, along with Julia Clausen. Rebecca Gasme provides us with project management support. Our music is composed by Greg Bruick, and our logo was designed by Gabby Fabland. Until next time, happy reading.